Hello friends, I hope you are well. Welcome, TechManPat here. Today we are reviewing a rare piece of hardware. A hard to get toy. This generation's greatest and best, well, one of them anyway, from AMD, the Radeon RX6800. Not the XT, just the standard one. Stock is hard to find, the performance is rather interesting. The price starts at an eye-watering 1,200 Australian dollaroos. Now, unfortunately, you cannot get the reference edition that this is, so that's very unfortunate. But in this video, we'll see what performance you can expect from an RX6800 and similarly its available partner cards. So big thanks to AMD for sending this card for review. Make sure to like this video if you did and subscribe to support this channel and get notified of all future videos. So let's roll the intro. Before we get into the results, let's talk spec. This card has a boost frequency of up to 2105 MHz and a base frequency of up to 1815 MHz. Single peak precision compute performance is at 16.17 teraflops. It's not power hungry at only 250 watts, but you will need at least 650 watts PSU with two available 8 pins to power this baby. That's it, 2.8. The memory clocks in at 16 gigabits a second with 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 with a 256-bit memory interface. Now, connectivity, well, this kind of may vary depending on your card. We have DisplayPort 1.4 with display stream compression and HDMI 2.1 ports, one of them, 2 display ports in this one, and we have a USB-C out. So yeah, if you have a monitor that's got USB-C in, you can use this card. The card is actually quite heavy and built like a tank. I think you can whack somebody in the face with it. I, for one, love the way it looks, and I'm impressed as to the overall build quality done by AMD. Absolutely fantastic compared to their past products. But that doesn't matter at all, to be honest. The looks can be deceiving. So let's look at performance in game using the latest Radeon drives that were released literally yesterday, and I'm filming the day after. So on the test bench, we have the Ryzen 5950X with 64 gigabytes of 3600 MHz, playing all games at 1440p on the monitor and then 4K on the TV. So let's jump into the results.
Let's get started with Shadow of the Tomb Raider at max settings at 1440p, and as mentioned, there is no RTX and no DLSS involved. The RTX 3090 is doing really well at 168 frames, and the RX 6800 is just shy of 150 of the 3080 at 130. Now that was on average over a period of 1 hour, and of course you can also use the benchmark, which I used both and got this number. At 4K we have a clear reason why you should not be buying the 3090, because the improvement isn't significant enough over the 3080. However, the RX 6800 doesn't do too well, but it is completely playable at 68 frames for Tomb Raider. It is a adventure game and doesn't require the highest of frames. Another game that doesn't require much frames is Flight Simulator, the latest one, 2020 edition. At max settings, 1440p, none of the cards are particularly playable unless you turn things down. Obviously, if you turn on DLSS, this makes the RX 6800 the biggest loser, but we're going to talk about that at the end. At 4K is when the story really takes a dive, and the RX 6800 is at 25 frames on average. Microsoft Flight Simulator is very taxing, but I would say 30 frames for this game is extremely playable. There is no fast action movements, and you're probably going to spend 9 hours watching a screen or a horizon that doesn't really change. And here we have AC Valhalla, and this is the moment where I was like, what is going on? At 1440p, the RX 6800 was coming out on top from the 3090 and the 3080. So if this is the only game you're going to be playing, the RX 6800 is going to do really well at 1440p. I was pretty shocked and I was pretty surprised. But then we saw the issues at 4K. The 3090 was getting 60 playable, the 3080 at 55, and the RX at 42. I would say that you can turn down some settings and get an average of 60 frames and do really well. Again, everything gets destroyed by DLSS. Watch Dogs Legion, not the most entertaining game, but it has a lot more to do than Cyberpunk in its open world. At max setting 1440p, the RTX 3090 does really well, and the RX 6800 is completely playable at 73 frames, and turning down some settings really will improve the frame rates. Now, at max setting 4K, the game is absolutely taxing, and remember there's no ray tracing turned on, because once you turn it on, it all tanks significantly. It is basically unplayable even on the RTX 3090. Horizon Zero Dawn, the PlayStation exclusive that is now on PC, and I'm very happy for it to be on the PC. It is a wonderful game at a max settings 1440p. The RTX 3090 does really well at 122, and the RX 6800 does a very solid 100 frames, sometimes dipping to 90 in certain areas, but overall the game was absolutely playable, and actually it was beyond playable. It was fantastic. This is the reason why PC gaming exists. And at 4K, the story doesn't change much at all. It is completely playable at 62 frames. It is much more of an adventure game and doesn't require twitch shooting, so no frame rates aren't necessarily required. The RX 6800 is a great card to play this game on. And finally, the most unoptimized, buggy thing on the menu today, Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p. RTX 3090 gets about 72. With some coercion from DLSS, you can get a little bit more. The RTX 3080 does 68, and the RX 6800 does a very playable 60 frames a second on max settings. And at 4K, it's pretty disastrous, and I would put it down to Cyberpunk being fairly unoptimized at this stage. Even the 3090 at 43 frames is fairly ridiculous. The RX 6800 at 31 frames is basically like playing it on console. So I would suggest you might as well get a PlayStation 5 at that price. At the end of the day, you can add about 30 to 40 frames to each of the RTX 3000 series cards when you use DLSS, and with literally no downside, and it is basically unnoticeable from the rasterized version to the DLSS AI upscale.
So there you have it, a card that requires only a major software feature, and it could be the best alternative to Nvidia. Until then, it's a bit behind, because I believe at the end of the day, no matter what the marketing says, if I get more frames here, doesn't matter how it's achieved, I'll buy that. This card has 16 gigs of RAM, and of course the RTX only has 10, which is technically a massive bottleneck for that card to exist in the future, but not so much for this card obviously. But it's hard to compete with DLSS, and now with a resizable bar coming to Intel and Nvidia based systems, AMD has even less to differentiate themselves. That resizable bar is SAM, so Smart Access Memory. So friends, thank you very much for watching. I hope this video helped you decide if the RX 6800 is right for you. Big thanks to AMD for sending this card out for review. I look forward to checking out more cards from AMD, and all I can say is there is a bright future for AMD, and this card literally shows it as just a few more minor things to fix. Make sure to like this video if you did, and subscribe to support us and be in the know when the next video drops. Thanks for watching, and bye!